Yay for the recognitions.
You're good here. Right, so I can. Let everybody in there. Okay. Get back to the agenda right now and share it and share the screen. Okay. So, yep. So just,
We're good.
the agenda, we're good.
Okay, I'm not seeing the agenda on Zoom.
You got to share the agenda. So, so share. That's it.
Aha, there we go. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Portsmouth School Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. Would you please rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops in harm's way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Prior to this meeting, we had an executive session. Can I have a motion? There were no votes taken. May I have a motion to seal the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, 7-0. So for chairperson's remarks tonight, you got a couple here. First, let the record reflect that everyone is present. I'd also like to take a moment to welcome our new representative from Little Compton, Hannah Ayotte. Welcome. Look forward to having you serve on as our liaison member here on the Portsmouth School Committee Portsmouth School Committee. Would you like to say a couple of words?
Sure. I just want to thank you all for allowing me to be here, and I'm super excited to be here as a recently former student of both the high school and Little Compton. I really hope that I can help build a strong relationship between our two communities. So it's nice to be here. Thank you all.
Welcome. Glad to have you. We're back in town hall for those of you who are joining us on Zoom. So our emergency evacuation plan is if there is an emergency, we have a set of doors there, 2 sets of doors here, and we'll meet out in the parking lot. A little bit of meeting protocol to update everybody on and let you know about a few changes. As you can see, we are back in a newly refurbished town hall, which is not yet.
Not completely refurbished, so we may very well at the next meeting have to go back. They had parts on back order, so they're going to resume the work.
Okay, well, I'll throw that speech out the window. But the plan was, or is, I hope anyway,
Eventually.
yes, that we're able to resume our meetings in town hall with an audience. And that means we will be live streaming the meetings via YouTube. We won't be Zooming the meetings in, so people are able to watch live if they're not present, but you're also hopefully more than welcome to come and be present in the audience. Re-ask update. Let me do the school committee workshop first. The school committee had a workshop the last Friday in August. We followed up on some of our brief presentations from Karen McDade and myself about the National School Board meeting, and we talked about the superintendent evaluation process, and we talked about high-performing school committees and maybe some things we might want to try. We also had an initial discussion of the superintendent's goals for 21-22, which he will present a draft tonight. And we discussed teaching and learning presentation updates that we might like to see in the coming year. And that's also on public agenda item business C for tonight. We had a re-ask update, school committee chairs meeting. Not really a lot of new stuff. I mean, I think some of it has been overtaken by school openings, but talking about school openings, the Department of Health recommendations, and that was pretty much it. So that concludes my chairperson's remarks. Subcommittee updates, Ms. McDade, policy.
So thank you, Dr. Copeland. The policy committee met on Monday, and we discussed two policies, one of which you will see on the agenda later on today. The other one was referred back for additional revisions, and we talked about potential policies we may be talking about in the future.
Okay, great, thank you. Now I'd like to turn the agenda over to Dr. Kenworthy for one of our favorite things always, which are recognitions of superb staff and students. And so Dr. Kenworthy.
Dr. Copeland, so tonight for our recognitions, we wanted to recognize our Educator of the Year award winners for 2021. So we announced these actually at the end of each academic year because we have to meet deadlines to nominate these individuals for state awards. So this is no surprise to any of these individuals. Then we had a district orientation day before we started bringing students back, and we did a whole recognition for the entire district staff on that day. So we just wanted to complete that trifecta and do an official recognition of these individuals here for this one of our school committee meetings. So our NEA Portsmouth Teacher of the Year for 2021 is a veteran special educator at Portsmouth High School, and then she is in the audience today, so please join me in congratulating. This is Christine Lawrence.
Stand up so we can really applaud. Yay!
So on the Council 94 Support Staff of the Year Award, we had co-winners this year. They were from our IT department. So Ms. Kim Rael and Ray Ballard. And they're on via Zoom, I believe. So,
There you go.
again, Christine, Kim, Ray, we've had several recognitions already. You can see flowers, plaques, hugs, kisses.
Socially distanced hugs and kisses, right? Good, just checking.
We appreciate your efforts and congratulations.
And so this is your recognition from the community. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Is there, Ms. Caldwell, can you see if there's any public comment there? If there's any public comment, please come forward. Is there? Okay, I got it. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Joe Deering, 417 Middle Road. September is Suicide Prevention Month. It is no surprise suicide prevention is not on your agenda. The rest of my 2 minutes will be a moment of silence for all children who took their lives due to inhumane school COVID mitigations, such as masks, lockdowns, etc. Love and peace to those children and the rest of us.
Thank you. Any other comments, public comment? No? All right. Moving on to the superintendent's update. Dr. Kenworthy.
Again, so first, up under my update, my official update section at school committee meetings is just an update on any personnel. people who have been brought into the district or who left us for various reasons since the prior school committee meeting. So I'm pleased to announce this evening that we've welcomed several additional staff members as we look to round out our vacant positions. So please join me in welcoming tonight our part-time school nurse assistants. I'll be talking more about that in my district updates. We did bring that role back on each of our schools. So for PHS, that is going to be Lori McDonald this year, and for Melville, Jenny Campbell. We also reinstituted one permanent building sub at each of our schools, which they're able to just more effectively use on a daily basis. So for Melville, that is going to be Kelsey Vieira this year. For Hathaway, Brooke McInerney, and for PHS, Susan Mays. PMS, long-term social studies position, Gina Quick. Also at PMS, English, grade 7, 1 year only, Sarah Strove. We have a new bus monitor welcome, Stephen Nemeth. A new general school aide at Melville, Lauren Howley. A new library media specialist at Melville, Jessica Cabral. Part-time nurse assistant at Hathaway is going to be Jennifer Sideman, and we're welcoming back, helping us fill a vacancy that I'll again be explaining more about. This is going to be on a part-time basis in Sousa as a school nurse teacher at Melville, and you may remember many of you was a long-time school nurse for us in the district. So she's been subbing over the years, certainly has not forgotten us in Portsmouth. So we're appreciative that she was willing to help us fill this void that we have. Resignation. So we are sorry to report that we are losing the services of Bruce Donahue, longtime library media specialist at Melville. And we have a few, these should be the final coaches to round out the fall coaching appointments. Ben Hurd, assistant football coach at Portsmouth High School, and then 2 volunteer assistants, John Hurd and Joe Farney.
I have a question. Does anybody else have a question on this? So the building substitutes, are those certified teachers that we're bringing on for this long-term sub position? Are they?
Well, they won't be in any one particular assignment, right? If they're going to be in an actual long-term assignment, they need to be certified. So they're
not.
In some cases, they are. I think I don't remember if at least all.
It's not required, but some of them are.
So they at least have a 4-year degree and meet the minimum requirements to be a substitute. But they would be look for day-to-day assignments, just the schools knowing they have consistency. This was a big request of each of our schools this year. Again, it's looking like we need to institute more and more of our COVID prevention measures. This was a big need that we had in each of our schools last year.
And so I noticed there's not one for the high school. Is there already one hired?
There is one. Yeah, there is one.
Oh, in high school, they're Hathaway. Oh, the middle school. I'm sorry, it's the middle school.
We do have the middle school. I think I announced at the last meeting. It's just
Okay.
these are the ones, again, depending on.
All right.
We get, go through all the process, and I meet with them as the final step. Once I meet with them and sign off, that's when I read them off.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Moving on to my district updates for this evening. And I'm going to start. I did end up sending this out as a phone message to the district, this first part earlier today, because we are noticing, a trend that, just obviously, I think when we look at the numbers, just would not be able to sustain. So again, we're hoping we knew that we were going to kind of see an influx of cases as we started. We've been told, right, as we progress through the summer, that September was going to be a particularly bad month. So what I sent out earlier today was, while we are excited to welcome back all PSD students to in-person learning and had a great start to the school year in many ways, we are very much dealing with the resurgence of COVID-19 in our community. To date, since the start of the fall athletic season and opening of the school year, we have had 13 positive cases in the district already. These cases have resulted in numerous classroom and bus close contact quarantines. It is extremely important that parents keep children home if they are displaying any symptoms that cannot be attributed to another documented medical condition, and just as importantly, to stay home and isolate while awaiting testing results. So several of these cases that I've been noticing that, again, it may be just, people are kind of out of the habits that we were in last year, or for whatever reason not realizing that they're, several of these cases, unfortunately, children have come to school either displaying symptoms or, and in some cases also awaiting the results of tests that then came back positive. So again, every time that happens, it just increases the chances of additional close contacts that we're going to have. We all know what happens when we have close contacts situations, right, where we put more and more of our families at a disadvantage. And so we can really keep close contacts to a minimum if we follow all of the procedures that we have in place, but importantly, making sure that we kind of get back into the habits of doing them daily symptom screening and keeping students home if they are displaying symptoms that cannot be attributed to another documented medical condition. And we're given the same message, same goes for our staff as well. So we've got to fall back into those habits. So I urge all PSD families to visit the reopening link on our PSD website for the latest back to school and COVID-19 information, including the RIDO playbook, which again, that's where all of the breakdowns are of what we have to follow when these questions come up and we have to look at close contact situations. To also review and sign off on one-time symptom screening form in Aspen, and follow up with school principals and nurses for any questions. Okay, tonight I am also pleased to report that the turf field at PHS is officially back open. The field did sustain damage related to the heavy rains that blanketed our area from the remnants of Hurricane Ida. While we did have to close the field temporarily to make repairs, and this necessitated the postponement or relocation of several athletic events, today I can report that the field is back open for practices and eventually games as well should follow shortly. Since our last school committee meeting on August 24th, we had 2 meetings with our reconstituted ad hoc district building committee. Thanks to the hard work of the school department, town, and community representatives on this committee, we have refocused our efforts on the communications plan for our school health and safety projects and the upcoming November 2nd bond vote. And we will discuss this in more detail as the agenda item on the agenda. On Friday of this week, September 17th, we will be hosting a second dose vaccine clinic in conjunction with the town officials and our MedPods volunteers. And this will be again at the PHS Fieldhouse. This is intended to be a second dose vaccine clinic. Anyone who's 21 days out from the first dose, we did host a clinic on August 27th, and that resulted in 30 additional first dose vaccine recipients. So again, every district and community has been asked to continue to do their part and just offer these opportunities as much as we can. Tonight I wanted to highlight that thanks to the efforts of Dr. Colwell and Mrs. Lennar Varnes, we have been awarded an ELC grant in the amount of $109,000.
Yay.
ELC is short for the Epidemiology and Laboratory Capacity for Prevention and Control of Emerging and Infectious Diseases. This is a CDC-sponsored program managed at the state level by the Rhode Island Department of Health. Districts were able to apply for funds to assist with COVID prevention measures. This was very important to us because we did not have, in many districts didn't plan for remember where we ended the school year in June. We did not have many of the measures budgeted for that we had in place, the additional personnel for testing and everything. So with these funds, we will be bringing back on a substitute nurse at Melville, I alluded to in the personnel updates. And that will allow us, right now we're going to take it 1 semester at a time. So we're saying for the first semester, we're going to cover Melville with a sub-nurse. That's going to allow us to again use Mrs. Lennar Varnes as our district COVID-19 coordinator. So thank you to her for stepping up to fill that role again. We're also going to be able to bring on additional staff. Those were the nursing assistants that I alluded to on a part-time basis, but primarily to help with testing once we're able to get that off the ground. Right? And then any some funds in there for additional supplies as well. Once all staff is on board and training is complete, we will be announcing our district testing program. And that was another from there and get into the remnants of current data. We actually had our training session planned for that day after, when the area had sustained so much damage, so the trainers could not make out.
Mhm.
Lastly, I wanted to highlight, and I believe he is here this evening, the efforts of PHS Principal Mr. Joseph Amram. So this summer, throughout July and August, Mr. Amram personally visited the homes of every incoming freshman family. Mr. Amram brought with him a flyer with information about freshman orientation and a PHS car magnet from the student council. Oftentimes, Mr. Amram was welcomed into homes for extended conversations, where he discovered many times that one or both parents were former students during his previous life. Mr. Amram for undertaking that.
It doesn't make you feel old at all, right? Just, no.
So unless there are any questions, I think I just keep going with the next part.
Seeing no questions?
All right, so next up on the agenda is we're doing this under presentations this evening, and I'm going to take this one tonight. I have an update, certainly for the community.
Oh, wait a minute. I do see one. I'm sorry. There is one question from the public. And the answer is yes, we are accepting public comment and questions via Zoom tonight. Is there a question, Ms. Sinclair? Or was that your question?
No, my question was from earlier. I apologize. Can you hear me clearly because I'm on my speakerphone?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, no, my question was from earlier, so it's not related to what was said more recently, but I'm just curious if there has been an update from RIDE or the governor about end goals, data, metrics of when we will move forward.
You're talking about COVID, obviously, and COVID measures.
Yes.
Yes. There was no update at the chair's meeting in terms of kind of an end date, the executive orders for 30 days, and then we kind of wait and see what he does. I don't know, Dr. Kenworthy?
Yeah, no, I was going to say similar, again, on our district website on reorganization, we have the most up-to-date RIDE playbook that is updated frequently as changes come about. So once changes do happen, we will communicate those as well. We will take a look at our own internal procedures we have in place and make sure always the most up-to-date playbook is posted there. I think the other big question, right, is on that everyone asks on the mask, the executive order on the mask mandate. So that is due to expire on September 18th. Yeah, we have to wait and see what the governor is going to do there. So.
Okay, well, thank you for answering. As I've said before, my position is that we need to continue to remain vigilant, but I think that while seated, the kids should be able to remove their masks while seated and distanced from other students. So I think if that's something that we can consider when the mandate expires, I think the children would appreciate that. I also wanted to mention, I don't have middle school kids, but I know middle school kids at Gaudet and in other districts are using lockers this year. So I don't know why ours aren't. I don't have a dog in that fight. I just want to mention it because when I was in middle school, that was a fun thing. And I feel bad if we're taking that away from students if it's not absolutely necessary. If other places are allowing them to use lockers, it seems like it's not necessarily a rule that they can't. And then the quarantine rules, I think as we're seeing, are going to start getting extremely burdensome to the children. I thought that they weren't going to have to quarantine if the kids were masked in the classroom. So I'm confused as to why entire classrooms are now quarantining for one case.
Okay. So I don't know about the answer on the middle school lockers, and the quarantining is because of?
Answer both if you would like. Middle school lockers, again, I don't necessarily have a dog in that fight either. I think there's nothing in the procedures that would, not enable us to use them this year. That decision, again, was made with the EMS administration through their leadership teams and other groups that they have. So I'm sure it's something that they're continuing to look at.
The distancing, especially because of how close they are together, and keeping them 3 feet.
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I know. I'm just, they're doing it in Middletown, so they have the same spacing in Middletown. It just seems like, offer the kids what they can have. You guys were kids once too, so if it's not a hard and fast rule coming down from the state, just please consider what we're doing and allow them the flexibility that's actually available. That's all.
Okay.
At this point, it's the best everybody can do. And I think considering that a lot of parents aren't happy with how this ended up, it would be reasonable to meet everyone where you can and not be more strict than the state's requiring, at the very least. That's all.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And then on the quarantine rules, Dr. Copeland, I would just say, every situation is a unique situation, right? So we have to, again, I can't, I think the most recent one, we only have one classroom closure in the district right now, so I don't want to give too much information. And, the more we do that, it's going to be personally identifiable, but, again, we have a playbook to follow. We have liaisons on the right side that are, Mrs. Barnes was on the phone with all day today. And it's just based on each individual, how much individual contact that person may have had during an infectious period with other people in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to the Equity Institute Equity Analysis presentation.
Thank you. So I put together this brief presentation for this evening just to kind of focus everybody on. We do have an initiative, right, that we set in motion at the end of last year. So I want to kind of remind everyone of that and what some of the reasons for it were, because we're getting ready to launch, right, different phases of our work with the Equity Institute. So the first slide there. All right, so this fall, we did enter into a contract with the Equity Institute for them to conduct what they call a root cause equity analysis. So figured I would start again with a very basic definition of, right, the focus in education definitely over the past few years has been on equity, and a lot of times people have confusion of, well, is it equity, equality, and what the difference is. So equality, I think most people are familiar with. This definition comes right from the U.S. Department of Ed website. And equality is just making sure that we all have equal access to the same things and similar resources. And equity, it was more meeting, in this case, when we're talking education, the students, meeting students with where they're at and with what they need to, again, ensure that they have equal opportunities, right? That's the overall goal. And we just continue to work to break down barriers that may exist in any area. Slide. So equity has been the focus of federal education policy since the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. So just a quick kind of, reach back to history of that's really when equity started to really make its way into federal education policy on a regular basis. And since then, it has only increased more and more throughout the years. So No Child Left Behind, if you remember, was the signature domestic legislation of the George W. Bush era, right before September 11th, 2001. So, it was passed with bipartisan support, huge fanfare, right? It was this major legislative achievement, and then everything was overshadowed from there after September 11th. But the law itself, as it applied to education, stayed in effect, and then equity, right, within that law has just continued to expand from there. So today, equity is a goal in the current Rhode Island Department of Education strategic plan and in our own district strategic plan, and it was in previous versions of each of those plans as well. So this is certainly not a new concept. Last year, equity was a school committee goal for me as superintendent, meaning that it then becomes a district goal because I work with our leaders, and eventually those goals make their way down to the school level. So again, as it related to our strategic plan, we thought it was one of the most important things last year for us to focus on as a district. We had a goal around it. We also formed a subcommittee, which we do not do in every case, right, to specifically focus on how to achieve the actions and benchmarks of that goal. Slide. So from the work we did last year, through the district goal that we had and the work of our subcommittee, one of the things, that really became more obvious to us, and as I worked and talked with colleagues in other districts, is, it's good to have a partner in this work sometimes to kind of help us come in and look at where the different issues may lie in the district when it relates to equity. So that is what we're looking to do in bringing in the Equity Institute. So these next few slides are part of materials that they've prepared to launch their work with us. Right, first is just again explaining that root cause equity analysis, the goal to gather understanding of how district stakeholders experience, view, and value equity, and their outcome. Can certainly, we can take from it what we decide as the district, you as a school committee, but their outcome in working with us is going to highlight equity strengths and growth areas and recommend next steps for further development as a diverse, inclusive, and equitable organization. Slide. This just breaks down the phases of the work. They're going to have both quantitative and qualitative measures. So those are those first two boxes. They would conduct surveys on the quantitative side and focus groups on the qualitative side with both students, staff, and other community members. They'll take some time from collecting that data to analyze it, of course, and then eventually produce a report for us that will have findings and recommendations. Next slide is, again, just based on all of that work, a timeline of when the Equity Institute is ready. They're ready to launch. I had asked them, and if we would wait till after this school committee meeting, so I could just update the committee one last time on what will be taking place. But we're in obviously that August to September timeframe, so they are ready to launch their data collection. They would continue to do that from September to November, and then within that December to February timeframe, they will kind of analyze the results and produce their report for us. Questions?
Members. So they'll, go ahead, Ms. Shears.
Who is the Equity Institute? Who are the persons? Are they a little bit more information? Is it people from Providence, Boston?
They are actually located in Providence. One of the reasons that we went with them, last year you approved a budget transfer to some initial funds for me to start reaching out, seeing what a contract is going to look like. We've been used grant funding to pay for the remainder of the contract. There are other organizations that do this work. The Equity Institute is located in Providence, so they do have a website, just Equity Institute. If you Google that, I can certainly send it to you if you would like as well. But yeah, they are a private organization. I don't think they're a huge group. They have most of their staff is right there on their website.
So you envision that after the data collection, they would come back, much like the Prevention Coalition, and kind of present the results of the findings and to the school committee.
Correct. Just give us a little more, third-party review and analysis of and what exactly does equity mean to the people in Portsmouth, in our both our district and our community. And based on their experience working with other districts, things will have recommendations in there. Ultimately, it will be up to us what to do with those recommendations.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Larry Fitzwater, 50 Kristen Court. I'm also president of Portsmouth Concerned Citizens. First of all, I'd like to ask Dr. Kendler to send me a slideshow. My vision is not as good as it needs to be. So I couldn't read most of it.
I do believe it's also linked so that anybody, if they want, you can actually download
You
it.
guys tell me that all the time.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying we
Never
can.
been linked on anything I've seen. So I don't know what the drill is.
I will send it to you, Thomas.
I wouldn't be asking for it all the time if I could link it. Yes, I understand. What should be isn't. So at any rate, Move on. We're going to react, and we've been reacting as an organization to the advent of this equity analysis of the Equity Institute. One major reason, and that is, according to our sources, national sources, these sorts of equity audits are prelude to the institution in the curriculum of critical race theory. We've met with staff, got some very accommodating meetings, we had general discussions about all this. That remains our concern. I'm not so sure that all members of the school committee understand that. So you're trying to make it to the parts of the committee on top. But in any case, the national organization of the NEA has adopted the teaching of critical race theory in all public schools in the United States. So this business about critical race theory doesn't really exist around here. It's a point that may be true, but we're not likely to accept it. So that's another concern. Now, actually, I've always had good relations with Portsmouth NEA, and although they're not close, we talk now and then. Don't really think they would do that, but this is an issue. Also, the district formed, as Dr. Kenworthy said, a racial equity and social justice subcommittee. Well, those two terms are common in critical race theory, and so we began to react when we saw a meeting this thing. This is subcommittee. In other words, all of this starts to build to a circumstantial case. Superintendent, assistant superintendent, and chairman of the school committee, chairwoman of the school committee, all made their cases to us. This is not the case. I'll stipulate that for the record. But we're seeing the same terminology associated with critical race theory. We're seeing it over and over again in this district. PCC, as some of you may know, is not an isolated group. We're aware of at least 5 other districts in this state that are engaged in this business. If anybody read the Providence Journal story on the Providence school system, one can come to no other conclusion. But there are others as well. I've attended school committee meetings in South Kingston and talked to some members of the staff. So I'm convinced that's going on over there. And there are other communities, such as Barrington, sending information home to the students, to the parents, outlining this stuff. So the idea that somehow I'm here to talk to you about something that doesn't exist in this state is not true. So I'd like to have a couple of technical questions here, if you don't mind. And that is, what is this survey going to cost in its totality? Anybody know? I think I heard it 17,000.
So the contract awarded was 17,000, of which 5,100, correct me if I'm wrong there, was district funds, and the remaining amount was grants.
And the grants are from whom?
That's state money?
Really federal.
Federal.
Yeah, Title 4, we use Title 4, Title.
So what are they entitled to? What is the title of these grants?
Title 2, teacher quality.
Professional development.
Teacher quality, professional development. So they could be used on a wide spectrum of subjects.
There are, I mean, it's a state-approved federal grant process, so there are allowable uses. Right? If there wasn't an allowable use, the state would have kicked it back to us. So they do ultimately, it does have to be approved for what we use.
Maybe without that grants were. Just curious. As far as we can see, the parents and citizens of the town of Portsmouth were never consulted about initiating this thing. Now, you may very well, and it may turn out to be that, believe that this is not a major issue. However, when you deal in this particular part of politics, it's going to be a big deal most of the time. So we're a little concerned to see that up until times when we were looking at joining the meeting, Zoom meeting of the subcommittee, there were no parents involved, but just staff. We object.
I have to object to that
Apparently it
statement.
has changed since.
No,
No,
there's
I'm sorry, I have
always,
to object to that statement because there was statements, there were parents from its
Well-
inception.
from the beginning, there have been
Take your
parents.
word for it. I will say that during that meeting, one of your staff mentioned that there were no parents.
There were no parents present at that meeting.
Well, that wasn't what we understood it to be. Mr. Green and I used to go on meetings, that was, we didn't hear. It. So if that's the case, then I'll accept your word and move on.
Thank you.
But there were a lot, and there were no parents present at that. I don't know whether the subcommittee is going to meet in the future. It sounds like it will. We would like to see broad experience in that subcommittee, not just staff. And we have a superintendent that determines policy within the department. Or applies policy within the department. You guys produce policy. But this is a major issue. We'd like to see broad public participation. I will remind somebody, I think all members of the council, sorry, the school committee know this. Citizens of this town are providing $35.5 million to your school department this year, out of a total budget of $41.3. We expect to have some say in what goes on in this institution. I'd like to underline that. I think it's, you may believe that citizens and parents don't have a role here, but we do. And we, the people, are the one who wrote this, the town charter under which you operate. So I think you would benefit from reading it more closely if you believe the parents and citizens have to vote. But maybe you do. We hope that we will. I'm not advocating for my participation. I'm forbidden to participate by the rules of my organization. Just in case somebody got a wild idea. So I would like to know if there's going to be periodic reports and whether the final report by the Equity Institute is going to be made in public.
Yes, not, there will be the timeline that was shown by the superintendent is that it will be a final report. I don't think the process is too short to have periodic reports because it's data collection, analysis, and report.
We're not pushing you into major.
Yeah, no, but there will be a public presentation. I mean, I think the model here is very similar to the Portsmouth Prevention Coalition, where, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, they undertake, they undertake surveys, focus groups, and then they come and they do a big public presentation and say, here's the result of our findings. And what we do with that information is then up to the administration and the school committee.
That's good and as expected. And we all, I think, know effort against drug abuse and alcohol abuse is a very, very high success in this system and in this town.
I think it's raised awareness of existing issues that, you know, it's better to bring out into the open and discuss maybe, you know, so I could see there could be some similar things going on here.
And those are my comments and questions. If there's any questions from me, I'd be happy to answer.
No, I think we're good. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms.
But
Sul-
I did just also want to kind of before we wrap up, last year again, as Morris pointed out, on this topic, we decided to focus on racial equity, because that was, a pressing need that we saw rise in conservative families. I think, we don't have to look any further than the latest September edition of Rhode Island Monthly. So, a publication that people are very familiar with. Page 44, and Mr. Fitzmaurice, when I send you the presentation, I'll send you, I have a link to this as well. Just highlight again, we are used to being in Rhode Island Monthly and highlighted for a lot of good purposes. Not that this isn't, but it's some of the things that are in one student's reflection on her experience at Portsmouth High School. I think if you read that, really kind of drives home the focus of the work that we're trying to
Be pleased to read.
we do have a question in the audience from Liz Fisher Sullivan. Can we unmute her, please? I think we had Ms. Sinclair's question earlier. So Ms. Sullivan?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's good. I haven't seen a lot of your faces in a long time. So I wanted to.
Sorry, can you just state your name and address for the record?
Oh,
please?
sorry. Yes. Elizabeth Fisher Sullivan, 86 Birchwood Drive. Is that good? Can I continue? Okay. Sorry. Little awkward on Zoom, and I have a little bit of a webcam issue. So if I'm looking in both directions, I apologize. I really want to truly thank everyone who is here. I know that it sounds like a canned response, but anyone who is here to engage in this discussion about equity, none of us are required to attend. We've all come off busy work days. We're adjusting back to school. It's a lot. And I truly am grateful to be a part of a community where we have individuals invested in being active participants in our public school. We clearly come from, different schools of thought. We've seen that in the past few meetings. And I really want to remind everyone that what is bringing us all together here today is the same thing, which is, a love for our kids. I am a parent of 2 children at Hathaway, and I was a parent that was involved actively with the subcommittee that was spoken about. And there were many other parents I see on this call, so I can confirm for the record that there were parents involved. It was not exclusive. It was individuals that reached out via email to Dr. Kenworthy. And we started to get together and have conversations and fight and cry and look at the, how we could improve issues of access and equity and inclusion before the formal subcommittee was formalized. So it was really came out of sort of a grassroots conversations of people in the community. And that work that Dr. Kenworthy presented tonight, it culminates from all the volunteerism from the teachers, staff, parents, community members that came together to just say, sat through hours and hours of Zoom meetings. And what brought us there was the stories that we had of our neighbors or our children's friends or things that we had seen that our children of color in Portsmouth going through. And certainly was not the majority of our children that were engaged in these actions toward the students of color. But it was, disturbing enough to warrant, what can we do better as a community? So I wanted to reveal a bit of the backstory of that and how this all came to be for, a deeper sense of forethought. This wasn't just, just didn't pop out of the blue, but there was time shared with the discussions about this, and that's the motivation. So, like all communities across America, this isn't unique to Portsmouth. We heard stories, a lot of stories, and we walked through the journeys of many of the families in our schools who don't identify, like me, as white, as Christian, or quite frankly, what our town predominantly looks like. And so what we found through having the conversations is our teachers needed support in navigating difficult conversations with their students. If we had students having conflicts with one another, if we had students having parents that needed to be brought in, how does the teacher navigate that conversation? And so that we could prevent those issues. And what we found was children and families in real pain who felt, unseen, isolated, and in many cases, quite frankly, outwardly and physically attacked. So this is initiatives coming from a place not of, critical race theory, which is a deeply complex legal theory that takes graduate students decades to fully understand and unpack. And there are many different definitions of that. Our K through 12 children don't have the cognitive ability to process critical race theory. And I volunteer, I am happy to sit down and put any curriculum out on the table with anyone who's concerned and have that out to walk you through why that necessarily, isn't the case. What this initiative is coming from is a place of wanting to help create systems of support, respect, dignity, humanity, and goodness to all of our community members. And we already know that we're well on our way. Where we see that all the time in Portsmouth, but we need to do better in some areas, and in particular, ensuring all the children are safe and seen. Because the intention here is that they all develop an education and a solid, secure sense of self. This is not geared toward a small population of children. This is for all of our children. Many of our kids are going to grow, and if they attend college or if they start families here or own their businesses, we need to make sure that we're giving them the ability to relate and to work with a wide cast of people from all walks of life. And that's not necessarily just race or ethnicity, but that's, it's a single parent or a military family. We don't all come from the same place. So this work helps to teach kids to see, oh, this person has a different lived experience than me. This is not, and I really want to stress this because I find this happen all the time. This is not about blame. This is not about guilt. This is not about one person having more and one person losing less. This is not about everyone getting along. That's a totally unrealistic expectation. And I want to stress, if you hear the word equity or an inclusion and you hear, someone's being blamed, someone's being guilty, then it's been presented to you by somebody who didn't know what they were doing in that sort of training. That's a really flawed method. This is about ensuring we have the structure and support in our community for our kids to see people who are different than them. It doesn't mean they have to be their friend. They just have to recognize, that other people walk through life differently. And I'm telling you from the stories we heard, that's not the case. We have a long way to go in helping our kids get there. So that they treat that difference with dignity, or at the very least, just leave them alone, refrain from harming others that are unlike them. So that we have less harassment, exclusion, and other methods that are common when we don't have these conversations with our children. So we're really talking about, and this was the hope in the group, was to help provide support to our teachers, to our staffs, to our students, to recognize the lived experience of others and help create an environment that's safe, it's conducive for learning, and it prepares them for a future navigating a wide world of people. And please, if anyone has any questions or concerns about anything I've shared, I'm happy for anyone to reach out. But again, I really do thank everyone for coming and at least hearing this and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I believe Ms. Sinclair has a question on this topic. If we could unmute her.
Hi, thank you, Sophia Sinclair, 201 Ethel Drive. Thanks, Liz, that was excellent. Thank you for your comments on that. And you make a lot of good points. I want to mention to everybody as well that I was part of, in the early stages, part of the Racial Equity Subcommittee as well. And a lot of community members don't know that there are children of color in this community who have had, just horrible experiences in our schools and outside of school. And this is a nuanced topic. Race is a nuanced topic, and the way forward is never to disclude people from the conversation if they don't agree with what you're trying to do. It's to move forward with them. And this is only a divisive issue if we make it one. This analysis does have my full support. The issue has my full support, but we need to do it right. And the gentleman that spoke before Liz, I'm not sure who it was, but he said, we expect to have a say in what's going on in our schools. And I fully agree with that. So I think it's important, that's my statement and these are my questions. I noticed in the slideshow that it says there will be events in schools. If this gets approval, I think it's important, maybe before it gets approval, actually, to lay out what those events are at each school so that parents can feel comfortable with, what's going on, if it's going to be something that all of the students are participating in, or if a subset of students are participating in. It's important to have, the parents understand what's going on. But I don't know how this gets voted in or when it gets initiated, but that was one of my questions. What are the events in the schools? Who will they conduct focus groups and interviews with? Is it going to be with the children, with the teachers? at every single school, at just the middle and high school. I think those are important details because these issues look different in an elementary school than they do in, say, a middle school or a high school. And then I noticed it says, findings will be presented to the community. Is that to the entire community, just to the subcommittee? Will the people who have done the analysis come to our school committee meeting to present directly to the public, or are they going to present something to the school committee and then you guys are going to summarize it for us? I think, having the presentation directly to the public would be useful. And then again, once they present their findings, their analysis, and their recommendations, how does the community have a voice in whether or not those recommendations get put into play? If they're in the curriculum or if they are, in the disciplinary handbook or however, these things are handled, how does the community engage in those details? Because I share the concern that I feel like a lot of us really do feel like we're left out of having a voice at what happens in our schools. I think we're finding this with COVID. And this is just another thing where I think parents just want to be involved. I think the best thing to do is to bridge gaps is just to involve parents.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate your comments. Let me just repeat the questions. I believe we already gave the answer to one of those, is that they will be presenting to the school committee. I'm sure they'll do a presentation to the district staff as well, but there will at least be a presentation to the school
Yeah, and I
committee.
think it would be just the school committee would just consider a public meeting.
Right, so that will be
Publicly.
to the community. The events in schools, those were the surveys and the focus groups.
No, I think what they were just trying to capture there was the initial kickoff event with staff. We've already had that.
Okay. I think it's a very good point that talks about, once we have the recommendations, how do we involve the community in moving forward? And I mean, I'm sure you'll be thinking about that as well. So,
Get to the draft goals.
yeah.
In a few minutes on the agenda, we certainly have a topic to pick up on the conversation.
All right. So good. That was our presentation. Thank you, everybody, for the comments. I think it's really helpful for the school committee and the district administration to hear multiple points of views on this. Moving on to approval of school committee minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
So move, excuse me. I move for the approval of the minutes of August 24th and the executive session minutes of August 24th.
Second.
Any discussion, omissions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any one abstention? Okay. 6 approved, no opposed, and 1 abstention. I don't think we approve. Do we approve
I don't think so.
school committee workshop minutes? I don't think we've ever done that, but
It's on the agenda, so I'll say.
okay.
Have the approval of the school committee workshop minutes of August 27th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous 7-0. Okay, most of our motions here in the business agenda, the first 3 are discussion items.
Consent.
Oh, consent, I'm sorry, skipped right over that. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
So I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, any opposed? Sorry, unanimous 7-0. Okay, business.
Sorry.
Do you want to go over the consent agenda or no?
No,
Business,
sorry.
the facilities capital plan, right? Can we have a motion for discussion on the facilities capital plan?
I move for discussion on the facilities capital plan and the upcoming bond.
Second.
Dr. Kenworthy.
Sure. So I'm gonna, so Mr. Diarra is gonna take the brunt of the presentation for this evening. As we're getting that set up, I do also just want to use the opportunity to point out, it's a little blocked by the screen there, but on our district webpage, when we keep referring to the link with the information on the health and safety project and bond, is there in the top right hand corner. And that is, we'll continue to add information there as we develop it. Right now, the bond and project information is mostly on the left, and the right-hand side is just general information about how to vote. We are going to have mail-in ballots, early voting, and in-person traditional voting on November 2nd. So there'll be every possible way that we have to vote will be available for this referendum. you have a question.
Please.
I've been on the website, but I haven't looked thoroughly at it because so much of the information is familiar to me anyway. But is there an FAQ section there?
Yeah, we're kind of developing that as we go. So we do have a draft of that. That and other additional information will be added, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. Also just wanted to point out, so we are trying to target various events, both school and community as much as we can. So as Morris mentioned, we did come out to the Portsmouth Concerned Citizens meeting. Myself, Mr. Bureau, Dr. Copeland, Mr. Shears last week. So thank them for having us there. And then I was able to be on Portsmouth this week taped on Friday. I believe it's going to be here for the next few weeks. But we also have the isolated portion of that segment that speaks to the projects in the bond that is up there as well on the website. So this evening, Mr. Dioro is going to take the presentation, and we're going to work also the presentation here for the PCC meeting last week.
Mr. Duro.
Okay, go to the next page. Again, this is information we shared with the PCC last week, so I want to walk you guys through it as well. So a question I get a lot is, what is our school department's annual operating budget for facility maintenance? Why can't we do the projects that are included in our capital plan using our annual operating budget? Why do we need a bond? So I thought I'd put that in perspective here with some numbers. So for FY22, we have 450,000 square feet of buildings that we need to maintain. I think, as you've heard me say in the past, we are required by law to spend a certain percentage of our budget on annual facility maintenance, beginning in FY23. So not this year, but next year. That requirement will be fully phased in, and that represents 3% of our annual operating budget, which would be approximately $1.3 million a year that we're required to spend on facility maintenance. We only have an operating budget of what is defined as maintenance by Department of Education of about $568,000. So to get from $568,000 and $1.3 million, the capital projects component of what we do every year is a really big way that we get to where we need to be from meeting that annual expenditure now.
So can I ask a question to make a point, more or less? If we, regardless of what happens to the bond, we will have to come to the town council and say, we need a total amount, it's 1.3 million this year, to maintain our legislative requirement to maintain the buildings.
Yes, if we do not maintain the minimum spend as required, the state will withhold housing aid money from the town, which is, as you know, the 35% of all of our projects go back to the town. They will not receive that money.
So in essence, it's either we pay it annually with the town, or we bond, and that gives also the town a little bit more flexibility.
Correct. If we have to go to the town every year and we don't have an approved capital plan, because if we don't have a funding source for our capital plan, those projects aren't approved, we'll need to do the work anyway, but we will pay 100% of the cost and have no reimbursement from the state.
And not really be able to do it because of the tax cap.
Most likely, we would not be able to do it, and then that would shut off a revenue source from the state to the town, which just becomes a vicious circle. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a summary of what the debt service would look like with a school bond if it were to be approved. This was prepared by PFM, which is the town's financial advisor. And if you take a look at the total project amount, which is $21,439,299, assuming a 40% state aid, which is the 35 minimum with the 5% bonus with health and safety. We would get PAYGO, which is roughly $1,600,000. That is a percentage of any approved projects. The money is given to you up front That's the whole, if you remember the $250 million bond that was floated a couple of years ago, that's where that money comes in. We would wind up with a net debt service, when all said, is all said and done, of about $820,000 per year incremental from that bond. We would be borrowing $19,840,000, and really, at the end of the day, we'd be spending $17,805,000 after our housing aid.
Mhm.
Again, these are, you can see the assumptions there. We won't know what the actuals are until we actually have an approved bond and then go out and see what the market looks like. Go to the next page.
So what do you feel is the big takeaway from that slide?
To me, the big takeaway is the fact that you could borrow $19,840,000 and really only cost you $17,805,000.
We're saving a couple, Mr. Furman.
And this is based on the assumption of a 3.5% interest rate, which is considerably above what the interest rates would be if we went to bond right now. Because I think I'm not following it that closely,
Yeah.
but I think the interest rates are below 2.5% right now.
Our bond advisor did say this was a very conservative number. I'm not sure what the rates look like. I can tell you that in July, I executed a municipal lease for our IT equipment, and that was borrowed at less than 2%.
So these numbers, assuming that we don't have significant inflation impact, which raises the bonding cost in general, we're assuming a rate that's likely to be considerably higher than the rate we actually go to bond with, which means everything the monthly obligation will be considerably less than what we're addressing here.
If the rates are, as you say, yes, they would be considerably less.
And Chris, just for clarification, we don't get any state aid on these projects until project completion, yes?
We don't get state aid until the projects are complete, and you can see on the analysis here that the first 2 years are interest-only payments on that bond.
Yep.
So that the principal and the housing aid match up in the third year.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Next slide, please. So this is the, again, from PFM, which is the town's financial advisor, provided us with these numbers, which would be the tax rate impact on home values. In this case, we did examples of 250,000, assuming a state aid share of 40%. That would mean an annual tax increase of $56.70 for a $250,000 home, $113.40 per year for a home valued at $500,000. Next page. This is a chart of existing town debt in blue and a hypothetical of what that bond analysis that was prepared by PFM would look like if that were to pass. So you can see that black line that goes across is showing what 2021's current debt service is and what that baseline would be. You can see that in 2025 and 2026, when the projects are completed and kick in, there is an increase in debt. But the existing debt, as you can see from the trend of those blue lines, are heading down. So if this bond for the schools were to be approved, again, with the assumptions we went through, which may be conservative, the debt in future years would still be less than what was paid in 2021.
So can I ask just a clarifying question? So in the last slide, you said that we talked about an estimated tax rate impact of 23 cents per thousand. And you showed those numbers, but what the second chart is implying, if I have this correct, is that even though that would be the impact on the overall taxes, that in terms of the debt service that we currently have, it's unlikely that people's actual taxes that they would pay would go up in response to that bond. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. The tax impact on the previous slide was sort of like in a vacuum if nothing else happens. Of course, what I'm showing you on this slide is that something else will happen, which is that the town debt service that's currently known will go down. So if we did not have a school bond, taxes would go down. If we did have a school bond, they'd go up, and technically they could be less than what you're currently paying today, even though there is a tax impact. And that was my last slide. So if there are any questions, happy to take them.
Well, I, for one, appreciate the analysis, and I think this is important information that we need to get out there and share. So thank you for putting that together. Ms. McDade?
Can I suggest that we take this portion of the video of this meeting and make sure that that's on the website as well? You know, because I think this is important. This is very important information, and it answers a lot of the questions that a lot of people have about how, you know, how. this-
What's the impact? Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? No?
You also, tomorrow I will be guest speaker at the Hathaway HT meeting. I know that a woman is doing as well. And then on Thursday, PHS has an open house, myself and Dr. Oliveros will be there. And we'll have, we'll be hitting each of those events at each of the schools. The PTG meetings, we're gonna make a little more interaction, discussion based. The open houses, we don't want to interfere too much with, they have a tight schedule and things happening. So we're gonna have a table set up with information and the flyer and things like that.
And maybe copies of this presentation too. Mr. Shears?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that with this bond, the need, we're going to bond, and we have high hopes that the town will support the bond. And my comment is that the need will not go away. If for some chance it doesn't succeed, it's not that the need is going to go away. It's still going to be there. And it's only going to cost more as time goes on, both with inflation of the items, probably with the financing and whatnot. So I know that we're approaching this from a very logical situation where we're looking at doing health and safety for items that are not redundant. And I think we're being very frugal. And I said at the meeting the other night, I think that this bond in many ways is more practical than the previous bond that we pulled back that was larger. The items that we're asking for are really basic maintenance. And that over a 5-year time frame, you're only, and I'm saying only because the numbers are large when you get into them, it's only $2.5 million a year on over $300 million worth of property. So I hope that it's presented. Yes, we're asking for support, but it really should be there. And it really shouldn't be a big pull and whatnot for the community. The community should want to approve this for our school system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferber?
I think it's also important because I don't think we've.
Use your mic, Mr.
I'm sorry.
The mic.
I don't think we've spoken about this earlier today. This whole thing, this health and safety bond was configured to maximize the return from the state. So normally we get the 35%, but because the state went out to bond 2 or 3 years ago for $250 million to incent the rest of the state to improve their schools, the construction and so forth, they provided these additional incentives. So we have the opportunity now to get another 5% on top of the 35% by having configured this bond in such a way that it all constitutes, or most of it constitutes health and safety.
And I think one of the comments we heard at a public meeting was, you know, for example, with the Hathaway elevator and some of these other things, well, these improvements should have been done years ago. And the answer is yes. Some of these things should have been done years ago, and there's not a lot of excuse for why they weren't, but we're trying to do them now. So it is hopefully a chance to get some information out to the community so they can make an informed decision when they vote. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Yes, please. Just state your name and address for the record.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sherry Wallach. I'm from 107 Long Meadow Road.
Welcome.
The bond is very important, right? These schools need upgrading. I went to these schools. My kids are not going to these schools. They go in the bathroom, especially in middle school, right? They need some love. They need some attention.
I think that's an understatement. They need
Yeah,
some love,
they
yeah.
have to change. Hathaway changed and put a cafeteria in the year after I left. So that's dating me. But anyway, I think this is important. I think it's important to get the community involved, right? I think you're, all stressing the importance of it, but it also brings it back to the community. It also brings it back to Portsmouth, the parents, the citizens, everybody living here. As we know, today was kind of a tough day for parents. I represent, kids in the school, kids getting quarantined, parents of 2 incomes. Now we have to stay home. We're now in another year of, families facing hardships, right? I understand the schools are too, and this bond's important, but where are we gonna come up with the tax money? It concerns me, parents are gonna wanna leave this town. Parents are gonna wanna pull out of the schools, homeschool, private school, where's the enrollment? Is there incentive to vote for this bond? Parents are talking like this, and I think it's important that I bring this to your attention. I'm sure not all of us were represented with the restrictions, the rules, and the guidelines going back to school. A lot of our kids were affected the last year and a half, and we expressed those concerns, and a lot of us felt like the concerns, we traded those, for our children's well-being. We wanted federal funding, we wanted to put the mandates in there. We're taking it, and we're having our children complain. I'm telling you right now, my son's sneezing in a mask, headaches. My daughter can't use lockers. Those are real concerns because these are children and this is a big deal in their life, just like the school, the safety of the school, the well-being of the school, the well-being of the whole town. It's all important. And I just hope that you all understand that and make it, important to you to remember what it was like as a kid. 1 year is a long time in their lifetime, right? So again, I just bring it back to that bond. I hope that you can get that support, but a lot of us are wondering, would it behoove us to do this? Because we may be pulling our kids out, if our kids are gonna quarantine, like a lot of us last year, 10 times, or we're missing a lot of work, this and that, it's concerning. So
Yeah.
that's just what I have to say. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you pull them out, where are you gonna go with them?
So we are actually building like a homeschool co-op community right now, from all of us around the state, and most importantly in Portsmouth, right? I pulled my kids out last year and there wasn't the support of community learning, so I learned my lesson there. My kids need like more of a community-based learning. So it would be parents coming together. We're already having meetings, we're already discussing. I have not pulled my kids yet because I do believe they need a chance to try and do school and be part of this community in Portsmouth. I said this at a meeting, a month ago, and I really mean that. And growing up in Portsmouth, being a part of this community is so important to me. My sister, who's now a teacher, I come from a family of 5, we all grew up here. I'd hate to see my children pushed out of school because nobody took into consideration my children and their upbringing and, how school is going. That is very concerning. So yeah, we're strategizing. If, are we gonna test every week? Or kids have sniffles, they're going to the nurse, or staying home, they have to test to come back in. What if we don't wanna do that? I represent a family that really doesn't wanna test every week. I don't wanna put my kids to that, and the fear of that. There's 13 cases right now. This says to me, the masks, they're there. Are they working? The vaccine, it's there. Is it working? Do we need to come up with some other strategy besides masks, mandates, and distancing? It sounds like it to me, but I'm hoping and I'm waiting for you all to come, to the same page as many parents who feel like I do, who I'm representing right now at this podium, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Other things on the bond, are we? I do hope that
Tomorrow.
yeah.
High school on Thursday.
Yeah, I do think the takeaway there is if you're looking down the road as well, as Portsmouth residents, it's going to come back to bite us one way or the other, right? I mean, this is the bottom line with the state legislative requirement of 3%. And the need, I mean, it makes sense. These are town buildings. If we don't maintain them, we're going to be in the situation where we're going to have to build a new school. And then that's going to be even more problematic because we're not going to support a $60 million or $100 million bond, right? So I think as Mr. Diero quite clearly set out, I mean, given the state legislative requirement, given sort of the debt retirement, makes good financial sense to do it right now. These are smart projects. They're ones that will get extra reimbursement. And they're ones that then we can hopefully, to your concerns about health and safety, with the new ventilation systems, which are at the end of their lives in the elementary schools. I mean, we meet the requirements, but they're at the end of their lives. We can have some of these health and safety things in place that make it a lot easier to do a lot of things that we all want to do. And I think everybody wants to do that. So just for.
I would just say that Newport's a good example of what not to do. They deferred the maintenance for years. They had to build Thompson Middle School because they kept saying, we don't need to do that. We're going to build a new school. And that went on and on for at least 10 years before they finally built the new school. Now Rogers High School is in the same condition because they've let it deteriorate. And now they have to spend whatever, I forget the number, 100 and some million dollars to build a new one. So I mean, that's what you're up against.
Right. So that would be my response to, when you talk to parents and say, why now? Why does this make sense? Well, because financially it makes sense with the reduction in taxes. Hopefully we don't see an impact on our taxes. They still may even be less. It makes sense because of the nature of the projects, the extra reimbursement, and ultimately the long-term health and safety for the kids. So that's hopefully, I hope, the message we get out there to the community. Okay, can I have a motion to discuss the superintendent's goals for 2021?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you. We had our annual school committee workshop on August 27th. That is typically where we kind of discuss these ideas. We have these 3 goals, which become 3 main focus areas for the school year. So taking in everything from the discussion. I also want to thank my central office leadership team members who helped me craft what you have in front of you today. This would be a draft. We'd be doing this as discussed only for you to review, offer any feedback. My anticipation would be that I would then bring a final version of these back to you for the September 20 meeting so that we can officially approve them and continue to kind of stay on the path that we want in order to hit all the benchmarks. So that being said, I'm not going to read through each one of these, but based on what I heard from you on August 27th, the first goal captures kind of the academic focus. And the way I crafted these this year is that the opening part directly links back to a statement in our district strategic plan. So for the first one, in order to ensure that all PSB students are prepared for college and/or career, that is a main priority goal of our district strategic plan, we will identify measurable goals and implement steps to close achievement gaps. So closing those achievement gaps, coming up with more concrete ways that we're going to do that, setting measurable goals. So that was the focus of our conversation on 27th. Then for goal 2.
Can I just ask a quick question or something that, can we go back to the benchmarks? And one of the things that had come up in the discussion is the multi-year goal discussion, like setting out that. And I noticed that you have here, based on the data review, multi-year goals will be set to close achievement gaps. So are you envisioning that at the end of this year, then you'd be able to say for year 2, year 3, these are our targets?
Right. So that's what I'm envisioning, right? We were at a disadvantage of being able to even craft a goal like this last year because we didn't have the state assessment data to use from the previous year when we had shut down. But we do have state assessment data from last year. We should be getting that any day now. It will be part of the future presentation. So that coupled with our STAR data, yes, we'll be able to take and craft and with multi-year measurable goals.
Okay.
Okay, so then again, and you can just review this over the next few weeks too, if you have additional feedback. Goal 2, focus on the equity area, and that was taking away from our conversation on the 27th, an area that we wanted to continue to focus on. So the first part, which links directly to our strategic plan in order to ensure equitable opportunities for all students. And then what I put together for you here is this year, we'd be proposing to focus on closing equity gaps, right? So we know we've already talked about our work with the Equity Institute is going to encompass a major portion of the first half of the school year. So that's reflected here. And then getting that feedback and deciding what we want to do with it from there. And develop those equity gaps and just continue to ensure that we are ensuring equitable opportunities for all of our students. Goal 3 then is the goal focused on the facilities portion of our strategic plan in order to ensure that PSA students are provided with state and modern facilities that support teaching and learning. That's the direct link to our strategic plan. We will execute our capital improvement plan. This one, it's a little bit trickier, if you will. So key action item A and then benchmark item A, speak directly to the upcoming bond. So we're all hopeful that we have a positive outcome on November 2nd. That's going to continue to ensure that we stay on the path that we want to stay on. If for whatever reason we didn't, then we have to be able to pivot and decide what we want to do from there. So I just tried to capture that a little bit in the language as well. So again, without reading through every line here, if there's any immediate feedback that you have or anything that comes to you over the next few weeks, I will plan to get a final version of these in front of you for the 28th. We have a meeting tomorrow with our principals and other district leaders. We haven't had that yet since the last meeting. We're focusing on those things. So I'll also be able to incorporate some of their feedback.
Great. Thank you very much. May I have a motion to discuss teaching and learning presentation updates, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, 7-0.
Okay, so again, this is a discuss only, just kind of presenting to you based off of, this was another topic of conversation at the workshop on August 27th. So we had a good outline of the teaching and learning presentations. Those will be on the right-hand side of the sheet. Typically, we make sure that we have at least one of those a month. So we continue with that this year, but that's left a void for some of the meetings. So taking your feedback of the things that I heard that you wanted us to make sure we're focusing on, we developed that schedule at least on the left-hand side. Obviously, the August 24th enrollment update, we did as the teaching and learning update that month. Tonight I did the Equity Institute update. Again, barring any additional feedback we would receive from you, we would just continue on with this schedule. The other thing that this also addresses is you expressed a desire as we're trying to get back into more normal operations as we have traditionally done with those operations with school committee meetings. While primarily we're focused here in the town council chambers for our meetings, we'll make sure that we have at least one meeting in each of our schools, and we'll be able to highlight some of the work going on there.
And coordinate with the PTOs, hopefully bring parents in, et cetera, et cetera.
I have a question.
Yes.
At our workshop, we talked about including a report on social emotional learning and activities that are going on around that. Is that something, am I missing it up there, or is that something that could be included at a different point?
And we talked about, where was the one we were going to incorporate Pearl Claire into?
Well, so at the 28th, September 28th, she's going to be working with me for the CTE update presentation. We also discussed having some SEL information at each of the school meetings so that we can just really focus in on each of those schools. And then possibly at the June 7th meeting with special education, just having some discussions on some of the work we're doing there as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a few things that, we just have only a limited number of meetings.
Sure.
So anything else that you don't see represented, we do have written down. We'll
Make sure to work those into the school presentations.
That's great. Thank you.
And then the other thing we talked about with the highly performing school committees and stuff was to have a mid-report on the goals. I don't know whether you want to work those into like one of the presentations, or do it as part of your superintendent report, but, at some point in January, February, that should be worked in. Other comments? Anything people want to see? Little Compton? No? Okay. Speaking on behalf of the entire community of Little Compton. Yeah, okay. Now this is a motion in action. Mr. Ferber, item D.
I move for discussion and action on budget transfers greater than $5,000.
Second.
Is that Mr. Guerrero or Mr.?
Guerrero, it is also related to Dr. Cole's areas that there are additional questions.
Sure.
So we're asking for approval tonight of a budget transfer of $40,176 from regular salaries to speech therapists, which is a purchased service. The reason for that is because we have a budgeted 0.4 speech language pathologist that has been unable to find a teacher for, so we need to contract the services.
So we just haven't been able to, normally we have a speech.
Haven't been able to hire someone.
Okay, so it's just, now we have to contract out, subcontract. Okay. Other questions? No? All in favor? Unanimous, or any opposed? 0. Unanimous, 7-0. Item E, that is policy. Ms. McDade.
Can I have a motion for discussion and action on the employee assistance program, which is policy GBGC?
Second.
Okay. Whoever wants to introduce that one.
This is the data report. We had a policy subcommittee yesterday, so I will let Ms. McDade, and then this is Wires here. This is in her area as our Director of Human Resources, so.
And this is a policy on the employee assistance program, as it says. And Ms. Wire really can tell you a lot more about this service, which honestly, in the policy meeting, I was very impressed that this service is available to our teachers. It's quite a nice benefit.
This is new as of a year ago, right? That we added.
This we can expand upon yet. Just to remind you, this is second read, so based on any feedback you have this evening, we'll come back before you one more time for final read.
And so this would be the first full implementation year. We implemented it mid-year last year. But through our membership with the Rhode Island Local Trust, we had an opportunity as a district to participate in this program. And with the support of the committee and the superintendent, we were able to do that. I'm also doing the policy work for HR and came across an EAP policy, so I thought this would be a really good time to bring this one forward since we're doing the full implementation here. This particular policy and program, it's a very robust program. So there's a lot of services offered, direct and ancillary services. That's all outlined in the purpose section. So it's not only for primary purpose for support, mental health, emotional health support, counseling, but they also offer financial services, legal services, and those sessions are everything's free of charge to employees and members.
I just have one kind of question. Why do we make, and this is just my ignorance, why do we make this a policy versus like a service that's just available to people? Why is it a policy?
Why is it?
Yeah, so you have a policy in place before, and the old policy is replacing that policy. It's recommended to have a policy when you have an EAP. There are some things that you really want to put in the policy that can come up around these issues, and that's in here as far as confidentiality. We want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and ensuring that confidentiality is covered in policy, as well as one of the sections on referrals for employee performance or behavior issues. So that's as much as it is not a mandatory it is not mandatory to participate in EAP in these situations. It can be used as remedial support for those types of situations. So it's important to have that policy.
Got it.
It does state that the participation is voluntary. And also another thing that we wanted to put into the policy is that during any of the sessions that an employee uses will be on their time. So it's not, because we offer the service and the employees making sure that they can use it during more time, but it is also, it's considered part of using it on sick.
It's a benefit.
So that's as well. And then just the procedures, we want to make sure they know how to access it and it'll be available on the website. This also really coincides nicely with the new website and that kind of launch. So working on a page for that and making sure that everyone is aware that we're defining performance services.
Great. Mr. Ferber, I'm sorry, that's all him first.
I think you just answered my question, but so we will adopt this policy at our next meeting or following meeting. But how do we get the word out? How do we let everybody on the faculty and the staff and so forth know that the service is available to them?
And so I'm almost through with developing the page on the HR web page. It's going to be a link to that page. All of the information is there, and then I'll share it out with I'll have the superintendent review it, share it out with the staff through the district email, and as well as we could promote that with professional developments or something like that. But they also have newsletters that I'll be pushing out through email. They come out it's monthly. They have monthly newsletters, and then they also have webinars, training webinars. Another arm of this whole EAP is that the district has access to webinars and trainings for staff as well. So we're going to be using those. So it's just another aspect of the policy.
Mr. Fayero?
I absolutely love this thing. I have an EAP for my own employment, but has this policy not been updated since 1980? I asked jokingly, but I asked seriously all at the same time because
My understanding, and Ms. Aguirre, correct me if I'm wrong here, there was an employee assistance policy that was in place and then it sort of lapsed. And so there wasn't one for quite a while until last year.
okay.
And it was reinstated. So that's why the old policy is really old.
Okay.
Never heard of it. So many teachers
Yeah.
said it either.
Other questions, comments? I think we vote to approve this, correct?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, no action then.
Time is actually.
Just discussion. Okay.
Planning to just move it to a third reading.
Thank you so much. All right, so before we adjourn, just like to announce that our next meeting is September 28th, 2 weeks from now. Maybe we'll be here, maybe we won't. We might be in the high school, who knows? But thank you all for coming. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Unanimous, 7-0. Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.